Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to the third official episode of the Be Here Today podcast. My name is Julia Bedell, and I'm your host. So today we're going to be diving into everything gymnastics, specifically my club gymnastics career and experience. This was very different from college gymnastics, so there will be an entire different episode on college. But today we're just going to be focusing on club, specifically the ages between 2 and 18 years old. As always, before we get into today's episode, I just want to thank every single one of you for choosing to be here today. I love you so much, and I can't wait to dive into all of the ins and outs of gymnastics, club gymnastics, my experience, story times, all of the above. And I really like the format of my first official informational podcast episode, which was my adoption episode. If you haven't watched that or streamed that yet, you definitely should. It's a super fun one, and it's already posted on Spotify and YouTube. I'm basically just going to be giving you guys a general overview of my club gymnastics career, walking you guys through it, and then I'm going to be answering all of your guys' questions. You guys did so good. Once again, I set out a poll on my Instagram, which is _Julia Bedell, 24 hours ago, and you guys delivered per usual. I have a new friend today. This is a sea otter jellycat. I got him last week because, God, I was just going through the trenches and I just needed a little bit of a pick-me-up. So we did that. You know what? Sometimes retail therapy is necessary. I'm super excited to get into this episode. So let's do it. My mom put me into gymnastics when I was 2 years old in the hopes of just getting rid of some of my extra toddler energy. I actually grew up in a figure skating family, so I think on paper I was supposed to follow that trajectory, but of course, knowing me, I didn't. My mom put me in so many different sports. So when I was younger, I was in skiing, skating, dance, swimming, and gymnastics. And the only one that I truly fell in love with and stuck with me was gymnastics. So from the ages of 2 to 11 years old, I went to this gym called Legends. It was a more local gym, a lot easier for my mom to drive and drop me off and pick me up from practice at. My mom started me out in like these open gym classes where I would just go in and get some energy out, flip around a little bit, play on the mats and on the equipment, and also do mommy and me classes with her. So I started out extremely recreationally, but soon a TOPS coach had seen me just during these classes and said, I think your daughter would be really good at gymnastics. For context, TOPS, I forgot what it stood for, but it's basically this program where young aspiring gymnasts under the age of 10 did all of this conditioning training and basically went up against each other to see who was the strongest. It was like this annual thing where we would have like a TOPS clinic. It was honestly so long ago, I'm forgetting a lot of it, but we would have a TOPS clinic and they would just test all of our strength. I think you had to meet like these minimum requirements to qualify. I don't even fully remember what it was, but this coach had spotted me and said, you might actually want to try to take this a little bit seriously because I think she could go far with it. This TOPS coach was named Debbie. I loved her so much. I had a very soft spot for Debbie. She looked like me. I felt comfortable with her, but she was also a very hard coach, which I'm still very grateful for. And in certain moments, I didn't fully understand why she was being so hard on me. I wanted to quit, but she told me to just stick with it, and clearly it paid off. Debbie was my favorite, though. She used to call me her mini-me. We had such a cute little relationship. And I actually just saw her recently, like a year or two ago, when I had gone back to my club gymnastics gym, my second gym, to train over the summer for brown gymnastics. So I started the TOPS program when I was about 6 or so. I did it for a few years. It was extremely hard. It was the most insane conditioning, super high reps, so much stereotypical gymnastics conditioning, calisthenic work. It was so challenging, but probably the strongest that I've ever been in my life. It probably took an extra like 5 hours of training a week. And for a 6-year-old, that's a lot of time. I remember when I was a TOPS gymnast, I used to be able to do 10 press handstands in a row, hold a handstand for multiple minutes. Like I want to say like 3 minutes. Be able to do like 50 half leg lifts, no problem. It was insane. Truly insane. I was like a little mini Iron Woman. And joining that TOPS program was actually the first time that I almost quit gymnastics. It was just so hard. And when you're that young, I didn't fully understand why I was doing this. I just knew that it was really challenging. And in some moments, I felt like it was starting to suck the fun out of gymnastics for me. I just knew gymnastics as being this super fun sport that you could go do, flip around with your friends, and then go home. I didn't know that it entailed so many hours of conditioning, strength training. It was just a lot. So I remember I told my mom this. My mom did not hesitate. She said, if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. We marched into the office. I told her, I'm quitting. And Debbie said, no, you're not. And she soon convinced me that I should give it a second try and that it would get better. I went back the next day, gave it a second try, and thank God I did because I decided to stay with it. After I decided to not quit, I started level 5 at ages 7 or 8. I'm not fully remembering, but basically I think there's a level 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So those are the levels in club gymnastics. And if you want to go to the Olympics, you can go elite. So that's one step above level 10. And that's so you can start competing on the international level and representing your country around the world. So I started level 5 when I was 7 or 8. I just skipped level 3 and 4. Honestly, my first year doing level 5, I was totally underprepared and I was pretty bad. I think I was too young to really understand what I was doing because I didn't really take competition seriously and I wasn't really taking training seriously at that point. So I was getting like dead last each time. And I remember I would sit at the award ceremonies and I'd listen for every single age group waiting to hear my name, even though I only qualified for one age group. Like, that's just how it works. And I remember they'd be talking about like senior B age group and I'd be like listening and waiting and my name just wouldn't get called. And then I would get the like pity participation awards. So that was nice. But my second year of level 5 was a lot better. That actually was a pretty lights out season for me. I had a very good season. I finally decided that I really enjoyed this and I wanted to take it seriously and I wanted to start winning. So I locked in that year and it paid off. I had an amazing season level 5 and that's kind of what gave me the momentum to continue my gymnastics career. And I was like, okay, wait, this is kind of fun. I loved the competitive element of it. It was great. It put a fire under my butt. It made me work harder, just truly strive for perfection. And then after my second year level 5, I progressed one level each year up until level 10. Legends was a more local and small gym that gave me an amazing foundation of my gymnastics career. But at a certain point, I kind of felt like I had surpassed what their coaching could provide me with. So I decided to switch gyms. I started at Breschans when I was in 5th grade, like the second half of 5th grade after my level 7 season had ended. I think I was around like 11 years old. Breschans was a huge transition for me. It was a huge gym. They are the home gym for Alicia Sacramone, Ali Raceman, like full-on Olympians. We sent girls to compete internationally. We sent so many girls to colleges on full scholarships. Like, if you wanted to take gymnastics really seriously and do something on the other side of high school with it, you wanted to be at Breschans if you were from Massachusetts. It was definitely an extremely challenging and big adjustment for me moving from Legends, which was this small kind of like hometown, just doing gymnastics for fun vibe, to Breschans, which was super cutthroat, very intense, and very competitive. It wasn't just all fun and games anymore, but I was up for the challenge. I started training alongside girls who had been there for years, pretty much their entire gymnastics career, and I definitely felt like I was playing a lot of catch up. The conditioning, the assignments, the expectations, it was all so much higher than I had been used to and a lot more challenging. I think I joined Breschans in April or May. So in about a month or two, I needed all of my lovely upgrades ready to go so I could test at Breschans to get into the big girl practice. They had different practice times and the lower levels would all practice at the same time, and then the upper levels 8, 9, and 10 would all practice at another time. This was totally new and foreign to me, but now I had to test into the harder bracket, and you had to have these skills ready by, I think, mid to end of May. So the coaches in the gym would test you, and if you have your level 8 skills ready, you can move into the level 8 practice, and if you don't, you stay back and do level 7 for another year, or at least train with the level 7s over the summer, which definitely halts your progress, and you just don't get as much exposure to the super professional coaches that were offered there. So I was busting my ass. I wanted to get into this practice time so badly, and we did it. It wasn't easy, but that summer, I had started training 30-hour weeks because I had transitioned into this big girl practice time. This is where all the big wigs were. You wanted to be there if you wanted to take gymnastics seriously, so I was definitely very happy that I got to join all of the big girls, but it was a lot. That transition was huge. We would practice from like 8:30 to 2:30 every single day of the week. Hour-long event rotations, super challenging dance and flexibility classes, and an hour of warm-up and conditioning. Like, you were going every single second. I worked so hard that summer, and by the time the level 8 season rolled around, it was a breeze. Like, I'm going to be so honest, that also was another sweep of my career. It was just easy. Like, gymnastics was fun. I felt like I was doing hard enough skills where it was really cool, but also I wasn't scared of anything. I had no fears. I had no anxiety. I actually loved competing in level 8. And every time I would do well at a competition, it would just build my confidence even more and just feed into the next meet. So I had a really good momentum going. Because of the way that I competed in level 8, when I moved up to level 9, I got put in the big girl group, which was actually with level 10s and Allie Raceman, as in the 2-time Olympian. So it definitely pushed me to become a better gymnast. I was throwing insanely hard skills. The summer transition between levels 8 and 9, that was my prime. Like, I probably made the most progress in my entire gymnastics career in that 3-month span. Then my level 9 season rolled around. And this was the first time that I really had experienced fear and anxiety surrounding gymnastics. I always got a little bit nervous before meets, but up until this point, it had always just been, pre-meet jitters. Like, it wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't crippling anxiety where I felt like I had a lump in my throat and if I swallowed the wrong way, I was going to throw up everywhere. Like, this was the first time that I really felt myself tense up from the fear of not competing well or hurting myself during my sport. It almost felt like my frontal lobe had developed, like, out of nowhere. In level 9, in preseason and season, I had a few really bad crashes that really scared me. I would fall off the bars and hit my head. I would split the beam really bad, and I know these are very niche gymnastics terms, but I'm assuming a lot of you guys are gymnasts or know something about the sport. Basically, I just fell. I was crashing and burning a lot. And I had hyperextended the ligaments in my wrist on bars, and then I was terrified of bars. This was the first time that I had anxiety when I was competing, and this 100% affected the way that I was able to perform. I just felt this total loss in confidence, and I felt so defeated at this point. Honestly, there wasn't one meet that I didn't fall on at least one event up until Easterns, but finally, I made it through my level 9 season. I qualified for states, regionals, and Easterns and made podium at that meet. So I was very proud walking away from that. That was the first meet that I hit all 4 events, and I was just feeling good. But this pit in my stomach still hadn't gone away, and my skill requirements were only getting harder as I was progressing to the next level. So now I'm on to level 10. That is the highest level that you can get to unless you're trying to go and compete internationally or go to the Olympics. So in my world, level 10 was my cap. I wasn't trying to take school off to go elite. There were a lot more sacrifices that you had to make to go elite in gymnastics, which I just wasn't willing to make. There were other things that I wanted to pour my time into where I just felt like I couldn't sacrifice any more of my life for gymnastics, and it just wasn't the right fit for me. So in level 10 especially, I really came to my senses that what I was doing was really dangerous and scary. And as any neighboring sport to gymnastics probably knows, the second you let fear start to control your gymnastics or the way that you're going for your skills, the more likely you are to get hurt. So it was just this total negative feedback loop of I would be scared to crash or hurt myself. And then because I was so fixated on that, I would crash and half the times hurt myself. It wasn't great. I did level 10 for 5 years, 8th grade through senior year of high school. And this was definitely the hardest stretch of my club career. I had the most amount of injuries in this period of time. I had multiple stress fractures in my back, broken fingers, fractured ankles, you name it. And many, many, many scary crashes that genuinely left me sobbing afterwards. But despite all of that, I kept showing up for myself and we made it work. I got recruited to Brown University the sophomore fall of high school, and I finally felt like I could exhale. That was a huge rat race in club gymnastics. Pretty much everybody was trying to go to college. Some girls would try to go elite and compete internationally to make their gymnastics resume look better, but for the most part, everyone that I was alongside was trying to go to college and trying to get scholarships. So this was an extremely stressful and competitive time because gymnastics teams aren't very big, and even now, they're even smaller than they were when I was getting recruited. So there's very little spots every year, and there's also only so many schools that offer Division I gymnastics at colleges because it's not like a super common sport. It's kind of niche. So just across the board, it felt extremely competitive, intense, and everybody was just gunning after this one goal. This really changed my perspective on everything. And although it brought me some peace, it also put me straight into survival mode because I was like, this is amazing. I'm so proud of myself. But that mental high only lasted for so long when I realized I still needed to get through 2.5 more years of club gymnastics. And there's so much to unpack there. You guys asked such good questions. So we're going to get into a lot more of that later in this episode. But then we hit COVID my junior year. And this was the first extended period of my life that I had taken off from gymnastics. My body went through, it almost felt like a second puberty. I kind of grown into a woman and turned into a young adult, which was very new and foreign to me. And it was really weird and confusing trying to navigate getting all of my skills back after COVID was done and we could start training again. I had to adjust to doing gymnastics in this new kind of body. Like, I honestly felt like a baby giraffe or a baby deer when they just don't really know how long their legs are and they don't really know how to use them. That's how I felt. At this point, my anxiety surrounding the sport was so bad. I didn't want to compete. I wasn't having fun anymore. I felt so burnt out. And my senior year of high school, I had suffered another handful of stress fractures in my back. And this sounds so bad to say, but honestly, I felt relieved. It meant that I didn't have to do another club season and that I was just done. I could sit on the sidelines and didn't have to worry about it. Suddenly, a lot of my anxiety had dissipated, and that was such a weird thing for me to say, seeing that the younger version of me literally would cry if I couldn't go to a single practice. To now sit on the sidelines and cheer that I'm on the sidelines just didn't feel like myself at all. I definitely found my love for the sport again in college, and we will get into that in a whole nother episode. Don't worry, it gets better. So I feel like you guys are pretty caught up to speed. Now we're going to get into all of your guys' questions. We have so many. We have 35. So we better get a move on because we're going to be here for a while. First question. Let's do it. What made you realize gymnastics was going to be your sport? I genuinely believe that my first love was not a boy. My first love was my sport. I fell in love with it, and I don't know how to explain that any other way besides my heart and my eyes would light up when I was younger. When I got to do gymnastics, I was obsessed with it. I thought about it every second of the day. All I wanted to do was do gymnastics out in my backyard. I wanted to go to practice. I wanted to put more hours in at the gym. I just loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved the way that it made me feel. I felt like I was on top of the world when I did gymnastics, and that makes my heart very happy because seeing the way that my career ended and wrapped up definitely makes me feel like I did it for the younger version of myself that originally did fall in love with the sport. And although I definitely went through different phases of, wow, I hate this sport, I'm so burnt out, the overall takeaway is positive. There was a lot of shit that I went through with the sport, both in club and in college, but once again, the overarching feeling is positive. Did you always enjoy competing as a kid? Honestly, up until level 9 when I was 12, I want to say 12 or 13, I loved competing. I loved the competitiveness of it. I loved being able to really show off my skills and show off what I had been working so hard at for so long. It felt like the reward to all of the hard work that you had put in. So as a kid, yeah, I was obsessed with competing. I was super competitive. Always wanted to win. So how did your parents feel about you doing gymnastics? Were they supportive or hesitant? My parents were always extremely supportive of anything that I wanted to do. I want to take a moment to give my parents and family a special shout out for the impact that they had had on my gymnastics career. First of all, my mom and my dad literally funded my entire gymnastics career. That sport is not cheap. Thank you so much, Mom and Dad, because I wouldn't have been able to do it without them. It really is a luxury and a privilege to be able to train gymnastics between the leotards, paying for practices, paying for travel meets. Like, you are blowing so much money. And also, not even to talk about the medical bills that they paid for me, all the times that I got injured, all the times that I go to the doctors. It's literally countless. So they truly sacrificed so much to make it work so I could follow my dreams. So thank you so much, Mom and Dad. And of course, I would never forget about my sister. Thank you, Paylon. She literally went to every single one of my meets. That was a huge thing in my family. My family never missed one of my meets in club. They traveled with me. I always had at least one family member standing on the sidelines cheering me on, and it really made such a difference. I don't think I would have been able to do it or make it this far without them. And another thing that I'm so grateful for is that they only wanted it as badly as I wanted it. They weren't the kind of parents that were trying to live through me. They just wanted to see me happy. So in the moments where I would go through very, very rough patches with gymnastics and I was just like, I want to quit. I hate this sport. I'm not happy anymore. I wake up dreading it. I'm an anxious mess. They were like, okay, let's quit. They never questioned it for a second. They obviously wanted me to make the best decision for myself, but they were never the type to be like, you don't have an option. You're finishing this and it's non-negotiable. It's not even a question. I just want to give them a special shout out for being such good parents, and my support system, my mom, my dad, my sister. truly are the reason why I was able to do what I did. They were always so supportive of anything that I wanted to do or accomplish, and they were always the loudest people cheering me on. So thank you, Mom, Dad, and Palon. Who are your favorite gymnasts growing up? I loved Gabby Douglas. I really started getting very obsessed with gymnastics when I think was it Rio? I'm forgetting. The year that Gabby Douglas had gone for the first time. That team I was like obsessed with, and I think that was the year that Allie Raceman also went, who was training at my gym. So I literally watched her every single day come in there, put in endless hours, endless reps, so much hard work, and see it pay off on international television, like literally at the Olympics. She is an Olympian, a 2-time Olympian, and just growing up being able to watch that definitely inspired me so much, and I looked up to the both of them so much. Like, I admired what they were able to do and accomplish, and it just made me want to follow in their footsteps. What was your training schedule like? How often were you in the gym? Levels 8 through 10. During the school year, I was in the gym roughly 24 hours a week, and in the summer I was in the gym 30 hours a week. When I was in school, we did night practices. Those were really hard, especially when I got my license and we had gone through the time change. I live in Massachusetts, so it does get very cold and dark and kind of gloomy in the winter months. There would be times that I was driving to practice and it would just be pitch black out. Also, this club gym was a 45-minute drive one way from my house with no traffic. So factor in rush hour traffic, brutal. Also, another shout out to my parents and my extended family, because there were so many instances where my uncle had picked me up from practice, or my mom would try to get me in a carpool group, or my mom would drop off, my dad would pick up, and they would just stay up so late, sit in so much traffic for me to be able to do gymnastics. Like, once again, would not have been able to do it without them. In the winter during school, the practice schedule was 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. And on Saturdays, I think it was like 9:30 to 12:30 or like 1:30 or something. So we had put in 4 hours every single day of the week. I don't know how I did it. I would get home from the gym at like 9:40, 10 o'clock sometimes if practice wrapped up late. I'd eat dinner at that hour, finish up schoolwork, and then go to bed, wake up at like 6 in the morning to go to high school. I honestly don't know how I did it. That was so hard. And then in the summers, we would train 8:30 to 2:30 or 8 to 2. I'm forgetting, but it was a 6-hour period of time, and we would spend more time on each event rotation and more time on detail work, working upgrades and all that stuff. So there were just so many hours being put into the gym. I felt like I lived there at one point in my life. Was the gym environment supportive or toxic in any way? Well, unfortunately, at the period that I was doing gymnastics in, it was extremely common for the environment in the gym to not be the most healthy environment, if you know what I'm saying. I think a lot of other gymnasts could agree or relate to this when I say that period of doing gymnastics, it was very normalized for coaches to be extremely hard on you, for you to be pinned up against your teammates, for you to get physical conditioning punishments if you had messed up or you did something that wasn't super favorable. The punishments were definitely intense enough where you did not want to mess up. There were a handful of instances where I felt like I was just competing up against my other teammates for my coach's approval. I mean, I respected my club coaches and I still respect them so much. And I think part of the reason why club was so anxiety inducing for me was because I was bending over backwards all the time to just get their approval. I just wanted them to be proud of me. It felt like a second set of parents to me. All I wanted was for them to say, good job. That was a good turn. Any sort of positive feedback I could get, I would do anything for it. So it was a mixture of being surrounded with a lot of really young and very impressionable girls who just wanted to get the approval from these super highly admired and renowned coaches, and them just being extremely hard on us and only accepting the best of the best and perfection. Inherently, the sport of gymnastics is you're under so much scrutiny. You literally feel like you are being watched under a magnifying glass. I mean, when you're competing gymnastics, anything that isn't perfect, you get penalized for by getting points taken off your score. So quite literally, this sport just makes you feel like you are being scrutinized all the time. Your behavior, your turns, the way you show up, everything matters, and it definitely felt like a lot sometimes. What was it like socially? Did you have close teammates, and do you still keep in touch with them? Socially, it was pretty good. I always felt like I had gotten along with the girls that I had grown up with. There were definitely instances where I felt a little bit outcasted or like I didn't fully belong in groups, but just kind of the way it is. Sometimes you're not always going to feel super aligned with everybody. Up until later in club gymnastics, I never really had a best friend. I kind of just was like a friend with everybody. I really found myself feeling the closest to these girls because it was kind of like a shared experience, a little bit of a shared trauma, if you know what I mean. We would just go through really hard assignments, really hard practices. We would get yelled at together. And that definitely brings people together. I almost felt like these girls were my siblings. We had each other's backs. It definitely is heartwarming, and I could say I could probably bump into any one of my club teammates and we could probably get along just fine just because of that shared experience. I'm still in contact with a handful of them. Some of them even went to college with me, and I did gymnastics at Brown with them. I'm really close to another one of my friends who I used to do gymnastics with, Alexia. She's at BU. She's no longer doing gymnastics, but we still keep in touch. I see her pretty frequently, so that's really nice. And even another one of my teammates who had actually switched gyms when we were in club, and I hadn't seen her in years. She went to a completely different college, hadn't really talked to her. When I'd qualified to regionals my junior year of college, and I heard that her school was also competing at the same arena as mine, I had asked her to braid my hair because I knew that she was really good at doing that, and she did it. No questions asked, and we picked up just where we had left off. I was able to get some of my closest friends and favorite memories out of the girls that I had met in my club gymnastics career. How did you deal with having to sacrifice so much free time or miss social events? Honestly, I kind of just viewed it as a non-negotiable. I missed homecoming, I missed football games, I missed after-school events, I missed hanging out with my friends. So many things that I would always pass up on, and they always knew it was, oh, Julia's at gymnastics. And I think for any gymnast or anyone who spent a lot of time doing a sport in middle school and high school, they get it. When you are that invested in a sport, it does take a lot of sacrifice. It was hard. I felt really sad in certain moments. I was like, I feel like I'm missing out on my teenage years. I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm just spending so much time in the gym and that's all I ever do. But looking back on what this sport was able to provide me with, I don't regret it at all. Missing those things definitely was sad, and I think really tied my identity to gymnastics even more because I just missed out on certain experiences in life. But for the most part, I really did try my best to balance it all. Did you ever feel burnout or lose your love for the sport during club gymnastics? Yeah. Many of times. I would go through really hard periods where I was like, I hate this sport. I don't know why I'm doing it. It takes up so much time in my life. I don't know what the point is. Just so much animosity towards it. And there were other periods where I was like, wow, this is amazing. I feel like I'm on top of the world. I feel so cool. I'm so proud of myself. I can't wait to see where this goes. And then it would ebb and flow. But then I hit a really hard dead period and a really bad burnout that pretty much lasted for the rest of my club career. When I started level 10, I really started to just hit that burnout where I was just on this steady mental decline with my sport. There was just so much pent up hatred and animosity and emotion surrounding it where I was just like, I hate this sport. I don't like it. I don't know why I'm doing it. I'm anxious every single day. I would cry all the way to the gym. I would cry all the way home. I didn't want to go. I wanted nothing to do with it. I came so close to quitting so many times. I think when I committed to college was a crucial period of my life because I think if I hadn't committed to college and I didn't feel like I was going to be committing to college anytime soon, I probably would have quit because I didn't know how much more of that I could take without knowing that it was going to get me somewhere bigger in the long run. So knowing that I was able to get into college for it just kind of made me put my head down, go into survival mode and just figure out a way to make it work. But until then, I was just so stressed out about college recruiting because that was the main goal. That was the main goal of a lot of girls that I was training with. It's if you're not going to go to college for gymnastics, what did you just spend all of this time doing it for? Because pretty much on the other side of high school, the two directions you can take with it are going to the Olympics or going to college. And although some Olympians are breaking that barrier and they're going to college and the Olympics, which is insane, most of the time you choose one or the other. And you know from a pretty young age whether you're good enough to go to the Olympics or not. I was not. So college was pretty much my only option to get something greater on the other end. Kind of feel like I was finally getting something good out of it instead of just sacrificing so much and not getting anything in the back end. So the recruiting process was so stressful. And to all of my high school athletes out there right now who are trying to recruit for college, you got this. I know it's stressful. Be gentle with yourself. Be patient. It will pay off. What was your favorite event and did it change over the years? Honestly, right from the point that I started competing, my favorite event was always floor, and it pretty much stayed consistent throughout my entire career through college too. So I loved floor. I just loved how it combined power, strength, flexibility, endurance, and artistry all into one event. I felt like it was the best event that you could really display all of those skills all in one. And the longest a floor routine can be is 1:30, I'm pretty sure. So in a 90-second period to display all of those different skills in a very cohesive way is so impressive to me, and I think that's why floor is just like one of my favorite events. It also just allows you to have so much self-expression. You get to pick out your own music when you get to levels 9 and 10, so just that element of it, and I just feel like overall it's just such an impressive event. What was your favorite level and favorite routine? My favorite level was definitely level 8. It was like that perfect balance of, wow, this is so cool. I feel like I'm actually doing really hard skills, but also not scary enough where I was really, really, really anxious and worried about hurting myself. Seriously. My favorite routine of all time was probably a college routine, but in club, I really liked my level 10 floor routine when I was healthy. Not because the dance was super amazing. Honestly, my dance was very bad. Training it was miserable, but just the fact that I was able to do such difficult passes and jumps all within 90 seconds is something I'm really proud of, and honestly feels a little bit out of body when I think back to how I was able to do that at one point, because I did 4 tumbling passes in level 10, and in college I only did 2, and I was able to get all of my requirements checked off through 2 passes. So the fact that I did 4, most level 10 athletes do 3, some do 4, and the fact that I was able to do an E pass within those 4 passes, which for those of you that don't do gymnastics, it's ranked from letters A to F, I think, A being the easiest, F being the hardest. I did an E level pass, which is considered very hard in level 10, and the fact that I was able to do that just made me so proud of myself. So that was definitely one of my favorite routines in club. What was the hardest skill for you to achieve, and what was the most difficult or scary skill? The hardest skill for me to achieve was probably my Tkachev on bars. I can insert a video right here. I didn't have it for very long. I was really bad at the uneven bars. I don't know why a lot of people from my gym just were bad at bars. We were known as being like the powerhouse gym. We really excelled in floor, vault, and beam, bars just not being one of them. So me and a lot of my teammates really struggled to get bar releases, which you really need for level 10. Like my bar routine in level 10 never really fully met the requirements because I didn't have a bar release. I just couldn't figure it out. I tried everyone under the sun. I had a Tkachev for a little bit. That was the closest one that I was able to get, and I put it out on the main set, which is like doing it for real, like twice. And the second time I did it, I hit my feet on the low bar and landed right on top of the high bar. I can insert the video right here. That scared the shit out of me. And after that, I was done. I never did a Tkachev after that. That was a wrap. So that was probably the hardest skill for me to achieve. But the most difficult skill that I was able to do was a standing tuck full on the balance beam. That one was one that I was super proud of. I did it when I was like 12, I think, or 13. And just honestly, when I was at my prime in gymnastics, I would never be able to do that now or even years ago. Did you have any mental blocks, twisties, losing skills, etc.? Yeah, I did. Thankfully, I got pretty lucky in the mental block aspect of gymnastics. I didn't have too many. There were a few that I had, though, that were just really annoying. I got the twisties at one point. I accidentally did a double twist on floor instead of a full twist. So I basically did one extra 360 rotation that I just wasn't supposed to do. And that was super disorienting for me because I just felt like I couldn't trust my body, because I would go and I would try to do a full twist and I would just do a double twist. So I had lost my full twist at that point, and I needed that skill because we were trying to work upgrades, and in order to do a full in, I can insert a video right here. It is a round off back handspring, full twisting, double back. One of my favorite skills on floor, but getting that skill, you need a full twist. So I was really stressed out because this was a foundational skill that I had just lost and felt like I couldn't do anymore. So that was really annoying to get over. I remember I was actually really scared to go to practice because the assignments on floor were normally 5 full twists, 5 1.5 twists, 5 double twists, 5 2.5 twists, and if you have one, 5 triple twists. I love twisting so much, but when I had the twisties, it was so annoying because I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do the first half of the assignment. And they watch you like hawks in the gym. Like, you really can't get away with anything, because even the second that you think you are getting away with something, you're not. You're going to get called out and sent back and probably have to do double. I remember being so stressed out. I was at home trying to get my full twist back. I was in my backyard just being an idiot, and I was like, okay, I don't feel comfortable throwing like a full round off back handspring full twist, so let me just do a round off back handspring jump full twist. Mind you, there's no like backwards rotation in it. I was just jumping and doing a 360. That didn't go well. I landed flat on a rock, and that rock met my tailbone with much force. So I busted my butt trying to get my full twist back, and I just felt so defeated at this point. I was like, you know what? Let me just quit because I'm not going to go anywhere without this full twist. It was driving me crazy. But then finally, we always had this week off in August where it was like summer break at the gym. They would just close the gym down. That was the only week of the year that the gym was ever closed. So I had taken that week off, and then when I come back after that week, I finally was like, you're doing a full twist. And then I did it, and I was like, thank God. So I never had a problem with my twisting again after that. One other mental block that I had that was just so silly was running. So I talked about this a little bit on my TikTok actually, but it was the stupidest mental block that I've ever had to date. When I tell you I would stand on the vault runway and in the corner of the floor and just stand there, I didn't know how to physically lift up my foot and start running. And it wasn't the skill that I was afraid of. It was not the vault that I was afraid of. It wasn't the tumbling pass that I was afraid of or trying to go for. It was just the running. I didn't remember how to pick up my foot and start running. I couldn't remember my steps. It was so annoying because I would just stand down there forever, and my coaches would yell at me, as they should, low-key, because that was absurd. I was wasting everyone's time. There was one meet where I had saluted to go for my competition vault, and I just stood there. I just stood at the end of the vault runway for probably a good 5 minutes before I gathered the courage to run. And then my vault was fine, and my coach was like, what the hell was that? I was like, I don't know. So I don't know how I got over that one. I think I was like, my parents must have thought I was crazy. I would stand downstairs and just practice running. I would practice counting my steps. Something that really helped me get over that mental block was starting to count my steps. So I would count my steps as I was running on vault, which would help my pace and make sure that I was aligned perfectly with like the hand mat and the board, and just make sure my spacing was really good. So the way I would count in my head was to the beat of my footsteps. So it'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then just vault. So I don't know why I would kind of like trot at first and then I would speed up, but that helped me. I finally got over that problem. So never had that problem again. Thank God, because that was a really annoying one. Did you ever try to create your own gymnastics move? I actually did, but never really seriously. When I was level 5, I think, I had an extremely flexible back when I was a kid. I can insert pictures right here. It was actually crazy. I probably could have been on Cirque du Soleil. That was before I had multiple stress fractures in my back, so probably wouldn't be able to do anything near this anymore. But I had such a flexible back when I was a kid. I remember one of my coaches at Legends was like, oh my gosh, what if you try to create a skill where this is going to be very niche, like gymnastics terminology, but you do a cast handstand and then bridge and then stand up, if that makes sense. So like my feet would be up here and then I'd arch and my feet would come back to the bar and then I would stand up and then jump to the high bar as a squat on. So I don't even know how to describe that skill in non-gymnastics terms. You might just have to look it up and piece it together. But yeah, I had tried doing that. I actually was able to do it for a little bit. That's probably why I wasn't able to learn my flyaway properly from Legends, my first club gym, because we were working on things like that, which didn't matter. Because the only way I think that you can get a skill put in the books under your name is by competing it internationally, I think, which I was never going to do. So what were your worst injuries and how did they happen? I think my worst objective injuries were my multiple stress fractures in my lower back. Those were just from overuse. At Breshens, we did do a lot of repetitions of everything. 5 of every skill on beam and then 10 full beam routines. 5 of them with a full dismount. On floor, we'd have to do 2 full floor routines, even at level 10 sometimes. And that is so much pounding on the body. On vault, we would have to do 10 twisting vaults at the peak of season. And bars, we'd have to do 5 full routines. So the only event where I think the assignment is pretty reasonable is bars. The rest of them were pretty outrageous and definitely took a lot of wear and tear on my body. I think I hold a lot of my stress in my lower back, and I think I definitely paid the price in club for that. Thankfully, after I finished club, I never really had a problem with my back again, which I think is a huge testament to how much stress I was under and how much just wear and tear was on my body from everything that we were doing. So I'm definitely glad I made it out of there. And then my other injuries were an avulsion fracture in my ankle, which was just so stupid. I was doing a jump and I wasn't paying attention and I just came down and like rolled my ankle. I felt like the side of my ankle bone like touched the ground and I was like, that was not good. And then I got yelled at. Yeah, it wasn't good. Honestly, kind of valid because that was like the stupidest thing that I've ever done. And then I had a handful of other crashes where I kind of hurt myself, but nothing like super, super bad. And then obviously the classic, a bunch of different sprained ankles, knee problems, broken fingers, pulled ligaments in my wrist, growth plate problems, you name it. What helped you recover or overcome injuries the quickest? I would say just truly taking the rest that you need. I think something that would really halt my progress in healing was always coming back too quick or coming back early, because I just felt like I was being lazy or I wasn't doing a good job, or I don't know. I would always be very antsy to get back into my sport, even though the doctors gave me a period of time that I had to sit out for. So I think just really listening to your body, listening to your doctors, truly taking time to rest, continue to fuel your body, get a good 8 hours of sleep every night is super important to recovery and just healing fractured bones, pulled ligaments, really any injury that you have. Just taking care of your mind and your body. Being injured, especially for an extended period of time, can feel very mentally draining and isolating, especially when you're having to take time off of a sport that truly feels like your life. So just being gentle with yourself, understanding that with the proper time taken off, you will recover, and just trusting your body that even after taking that time off, you will be able to come back even better in the long run. How did you deal with pressure and mental breakdowns at the gym? Well, a lot of the times I would deal with these emotions by crying, and I still do that a lot when I feel very overwhelmed, stressed, anxious, depressed, happy, mad. Honestly, any emotion that I feel, I'm crying. So in the gym, when I would feel frustrated, upset, sad, in pain, really any emotion, any feeling, I'd most of the time end up crying when that emotion just felt too overwhelming for me to keep in anymore. This was not my coach's favorite thing. They hated when I cried in the gym. Most of the time, I would try to remove myself and go sit in the bathroom for a second or sit in the locker room for a little bit. Very short period of time, because they also didn't like when I wasn't in the gym. So I sometimes didn't know how to make them happy. But I would sit in the locker room and I would try to just collect myself, breathe, give myself little mental pep talks. Sometimes I'd go into the bathroom, look myself in the mirror, give myself like, you got this, you can do this, come on, only this many hours left of practice, like, and then you get to go home and go to bed. Whatever it took that day, I was willing to tell myself, even if that meant some delusional comments. But yeah, I think for the most part, I really just tried to not let the pressure or mental breakdowns really spiral me into a bad place where I was just going to be stuck having a super unproductive practice for the rest of the day. So I would try to just get a hold of my bearings, collect myself, and figure out how I was going to finish the rest of practice off on a good foot. Sometimes I would spiral down these rabbit holes and it wouldn't get better, and I was just fighting for my life for the entire practice, and I would go home and probably cry some more. And then I would go back to the gym the next day, and most of the time it was better. So it does always look up. As an athlete, there are always going to be really hard days and rough patches, but we work through them. Did you ever struggle with body image or balancing body dysmorphia and being healthy? Up until COVID, I always was extremely thin and tiny. I was very muscular, and I was just short and skinny. So my coaches never felt super inclined to comment on my body, but the unfortunate part is there would be comments made about some of my teammates' bodies, and I would see this happen, and it was so disheartening to see and normalized in the gymnastics world. This isn't something specific. I don't think any of these experiences are specific to my gym. They happened pretty much at every gym in this era. It's just the way it was, where these girls' bodies would get commented on, and I could tell that it really negatively impacted them, and it was really sad to see. And some people, even I know, struggled with it for years after, even after quitting the sport. So I think it is so important, especially when you are dealing with super young and impressionable athletes, that as an adult, as a coach, like, your words carry so much weight. And I did see that this had an impact on other girls. I didn't have too much of an issue with it. Actually, my coaches were always telling me, you need to gain weight, you look too small. So it was a different kind of body shaming, but it didn't really bother me. I knew that I ate healthy. I knew that I was doing everything that I could, and this was just the way my body was. So it didn't affect me as much. As for being healthy, I always just tried to prioritize eating good foods that made me feel good, fueling before and after the gym, never letting myself go hungry, and just eating super intuitively. I'd say in middle school and high school, my relationship with food was super healthy. Did you ever have to follow a specific diet? No. They never made us follow a specific diet or weigh us. I know that at some gyms, this is crazy, at some gymnastics gyms, that was extremely normalized for girls to be weighed because these super cutthroat programs were really just trying to create an army of all of these girls that looked exactly the same and functioned exactly the same. This crazy era of gymnastics. What habits or traits did you develop as a young athlete that stuck with you today? I'd say the biggest thing that has stuck with me is my discipline and my work ethic. Having to sacrifice so much time and energy and just push through such hard mental ruts in that sport has truly given me all the tools that I need to really succeed and go really far in life. The amount of practices that I had to drag myself through where I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. And I made it through every single time. Or the amount of times that I was so upset because I had to miss something like a class field trip, a weekend trip with my class, homecoming, football games, prom, like whatever it may be. So many sacrifices. Like it always seemed to line up that prom was right around the time of nationals. So obviously, if you made it to nationals, you're training for nationals. So I think just anyone in the sport can relate that the amount of discipline that you need to be able to still show up for yourself and stick to the plan, not the mood, is so challenging, but something that really does apply to everything in life and is just such an important tool to have. So I'm very grateful that that muscle in my mind and my body was exercised very young, and now I feel very confident in myself that when I need to show up for myself, I will every single time. And I'm also able to work at things very hard, whether that be mentally or physically. I love going to the gym and being able to lift weights and do cardio and all of that. And I feel like I'm able to push myself harder in those things because I have my background in gymnastics and just all of those years of strength training, weight training, whatever it may be. Just that experience is super... I just totally lost my train of thought. Super awesome to walk away with. Okay, well, my vocabulary is slimming out. I'm getting tired. This is going to be such a long episode. Oh my gosh. We're nearing the end. What were competitions like? Competitions in club were so painfully long. I give my family so much credit for sitting there and cheering me on through all of these, because you could be at a club gymnastics competition for 8 hours. I'm not kidding. Because there were so many girls, especially in the lower levels, that were doing gymnastics. There were just so many girls that had to compete and had to be judged, and they had to flash their scores, and it's just a whole thing. And then everybody does all 4 events in club. So it would take forever. It was painful. You basically just go. Sometimes there's so many girls where they call it flight A and flight B, where they would have flight A compete that event and then flight B would compete that event, and then everybody rotates. So sometimes in club you would have a full off period where you would just be sitting there and standing for like 35 minutes to an hour waiting for that rotation to be done, and then you would move to the next event. And there are 4 events in women's gymnastics, and in club you have to compete all 4 if you want to go to states, regionals, or nationals. So those events were bars, beam, floor, and vault. Some meets between getting there, warming up, awards, you'd be there for 8+ hours. The average meet, I'd say, was at least 4 hours. Did you ever want to make the US team or compete at nationals? So I did compete at nationals in club gymnastics, but that was called Junior Olympic Nationals, which is like the nationals that you go to when you're level 10. You have to qualify through qualifying for states, and then qualifying for regionals, and then qualifying for nationals through regionals by placing in the top, I think, 6 in your age group or something like that. So I did go to nationals before, but not like the national team. Those are different things. At one point, yeah, when I was a little girl, I did aspire to be on the US team, and I wanted to represent my country. I think I soon came to terms with the level of sacrifice that it would take to train at that level and intensity. So I just kind of let that one go pretty quick. What was the hardest part about club gymnastics for you? Physically, it was extremely demanding and challenging, and the injuries that I went through and had to overcome, and I'm sure any gymnast or athlete can relate to this, like it is a lot, but the biggest thing is the mental aspect of it. The mental aspect of having to show up every single day, put in so many hours, and really pull yourself out of those hard ruts that you'll just inevitably get stuck in, whether that be you had a really hard injury and you're trying to come back from it and you just feel like you're never going to be the same athlete again, or just going through a really hard patch where you feel like you're not making any progress and struggling with self-confidence in yourself and your ability to do your sport. Like there's just so many different mental obstacles that made gymnastics so hard. I can't even begin to explain. What was the recruiting process like? How many schools were you interested in before Brown? So thankfully, my recruiting process was super smooth. I know that this isn't the story for everybody, but I honestly think I just got very lucky. The Brown Gymnastics head coach had been to Breshton's before because one of my older teammates had gotten recruited to Brown. So she was coming to watch her, and she had seen me in a handful of other practices. And so she already knew what my gymnastics looked like. And I had a very common thing is that girls will make recruiting pages for themselves. So whether that's on YouTube or Instagram, they would create these pages where coaches could watch all of your highlights and routines and skills and whatever that may be to see if you're favorable to come watch and practice and hopefully recruit. So this coach had already seen me, and she had offered me pretty early on. But before that, I'd reached out to all of the Ivies that offered gymnastics. So Yale. Oh, actually, I didn't reach out to Cornell. I'm sorry. I reached out to Yale, Penn, and Brown. And I also had reached out to UNC and Stanford. So not that many schools, but honestly, after that first round of emails, Brown had offered me, and I just took it right on the spot without even seeing the school or the campus or any of it. So I got very lucky that that shot in the dark really paid off for me. I was reaching out to a handful. I think the recruiting landscape is very different now and also just varies so much from sport to sport. Could you have gotten the same opportunities if you had started later, like in high school? No. Gymnastics, unfortunately, is one of those sports that you do need to start really young if you want to make it far. High school would 100% have been way too late for me to start gymnastics. I think you make the most progress in your gymnastics career from the ages of 6 to 12. That is such a critical time frame for any gymnast. I think partially because when you're younger, and I definitely experienced this, when you're younger, you don't really realize what you're doing is super dangerous and scary. You just kind of view it as being fun. That's why Debbie, one of my club coaches from Legends, had emphasized so much to me that it is so important that you get as many skills as possible before you get older, because when you kind of come to your senses on these things, it's a lot harder to make this progress. Whereas when you're younger and then you learn it, and then even when your frontal lobe does develop and you're like, ooh, that's kind of scary, what I'm doing is pretty risky, you've already done it a million times and your body knows how to do it, so it's much less worrisome. When you're older, your body obviously works a lot different. I think most gymnasts peak in late middle school to probably early high school. That is the time where I think most girls are at their prime. Not to say that they can't compete better or clean up their stuff later in life, but I think just your body as a woman is so agile in that period of your life. It's kind of like a prepubescent phase where you can do anything. You feel unstoppable. You're probably your strongest, you're most agile, you're most capable of being able to do anything. So I would say high school definitely would have been way too late for me to start gymnastics and get recruited to college. I honestly think gymnastics is one of those sports that at latest, if you want to make it to college, you probably need to start by 8 years old. How did you stay disciplined balancing school gymnastics and YouTube? I honestly was just so fixated on my goals. I knew what I wanted. I'm not going to lie, when I was in middle school and high school, my vision for myself and my future was extremely clear. I knew that I wanted to be recruited for Division 1. I knew that I wanted to make it on YouTube, and I knew that school was very important to me. My education was always at the forefront of my mind. I wanted to get recruited to a school for gymnastics that also had really, really good academics. I think just constantly reminding myself of where I wanted to be and what it took to get there was one of the main reasons why I was able to just stay so disciplined. Why did you decide to retire after college? Did you consider going pro? I'd never really considered going pro. I think that dream died when I was about 11 years old and I realized I wasn't talented enough to be top 4 in the country to qualify for the Olympics or go elite. So after that, I just kind of knew that college was the end of my path. Most girls who go to college and do Division 1 athletics, besides those very few who are Olympians and go back to college and then go back to the Olympics, just retire after college. That's the very typical timeline. Unless you're going to the Olympics, there really is no point for you to continue doing gymnastics after college. Also, my body was just done. I don't think I could have taken any more time than I did doing gymnastics. I barely was holding myself together by the end of it. So I think between my body just tapping out and just being mentally and physically fulfilled, complete, and also kind of just done with the sport, it was time to retire after my college career had concluded. What was your favorite memory from your club gymnastics years? States was a huge deal for us. I think for like 20 plus years, we were the reigning champs for Massachusetts. I think my senior year, we won, I'll have to look it up, but like the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, we had passed this like huge milestone of consecutive wins of states. That was the one time of the year that I actually felt like our coaches were super proud of us, and we really did feel like a team. For the most part in club, gymnastics kind of does feel like an individual sport until you make it to college. So it really felt like every man for themselves until we made it to states. And then states week was like hell week in our gym, and we would bust our butts. But it was kind of like this collective goal that we all just kind of subconsciously agreed on. It was like an unspoken thing that we were going to bust our butts and we were going to defend our title. So definitely winning states all of those years that I was level 10 was huge, and one of my favorite memories. Looking back, was it all worth it? Yeah. I mean, although there were 100% some really, really rough patches in there, I think that gymnastics and my whole experience regarding it has shaped me so much as a person, and I genuinely don't think I would be where I am today without it. It taught me so many lessons. It provided me with so many different opportunities, and also just really made me face so many challenges that I never would have encountered otherwise. Those moments were so hard, and honestly, looking back on it sometimes, I don't know how I made it through it, but without those experiences, I truly don't think I would be the person that I am today. I'm very grateful for all of the people that I got to meet through the process and who have become because of it. Sometimes people will ask, if you were given $10 million, would you go 10 years forward or back in time? I kind of struggle with that question. I think most people would say they'd go 10 years back in time. But 10 years back in time would mean I was turning 13 and I was about to start my journey at Breast Gins and basically just start taking my gymnastics career really seriously. I don't know if I could do that. I'm going to be so real. I think in this lifetime, I was only cut out to do that once. So I don't know. But I also wouldn't want to wish 10 years of my life away by going forward. Gosh, that's a whole story for another time. But oh my gosh, my body almost feels stiff from like sitting here for so long. I think we have officially made it through my club gymnastics episode of the Be Here Today podcast. I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This was so fun for me to just dive into all of the ins and outs of my club gymnastics career. And honestly, even after talking for, this is probably going to be like over an hour long as an episode, I feel like I didn't even scrape the surface. There just are so many experiences, lessons, stories from club that I have over 16 years that we definitely could do multiple more episodes on this. So if you have other ideas of like directions that I could take talking about my club gymnastics career in, please comment those down below, because I just feel like there's so much content to work with there. Maybe I could do an episode about just funny stories from my club gymnastics career, because there are an endless amount. But yeah, my mouth is really dry from talking so much. But I really hope you guys enjoyed hanging out with me today. I'd also like to apologize if the lighting has changed so many times. I always film this in natural light, and inevitably the sun goes down. So it's definitely gotten a lot darker than it started out as. So I'd like to apologize for that. But hopefully the mic cooperated and this audio is going to go through without a hitch. I was able to film this in one take. I'm feeling very good, very happy. If you guys are watching this on Spotify or YouTube, because I actually figured out that I can upload things to Spotify with video, comment down below the gymnast emoji. I feel like that's only fitting.